I'm Congressman Al Green, and I'd like to thank you for joining this forum as a part of the Congressional Black Caucus's annual legislative conference. It's my pleasure today to co-host this program with Senator Ben Cardin on our legislation that will codify and make permanent the Minority Business Development Agency. H.R. 2689, the Minority Business Resiliency Act of 2021, provides a COVID-19 economic vaccination and recovery plan for minority businesses. The bill would make permanent and expand the reach of the Minority Business Development Agency, which was created decades ago by executive order, but never codified. My legislation will supersede the Nixon-era executive order, codify the MBDA in federal law, and expand its mandate for programs that assist the development and resiliency of minority business enterprises, the MBEs. MBEs are defined as firms that are at least 51% owned by one or more socially disadvantaged individuals and whose management and daily business operations are controlled by one or more socially disadvantaged individuals. S 1255 is the companion bill in the Senate, which is led by Senator Ben Cardin, who was instrumental in the bill's inclusion in the infrastructure package. S 1255 has two Republican co-sponsors, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina and Senator Roger Whitaker of Mississippi. Minority business enterprises have been among the hardest hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to a National Bureau of Economic Research analysis of the impact of the pandemic on small businesses from February to April 2020, an estimated 17% of white-owned businesses closed, 26% of Asian businesses closed, 32% of Latinx businesses closed, and 41% of Black-owned businesses closed. This disproportionate impact of the pandemic on minority-owned businesses reflects long-standing racial disparities in access to capital, mentorship, and technical training. The Minority Business Resiliency Act would vaccinate against additional COVID-19 disparate impact on minority businesses and aid in the recovery. By making the Minority Business Development Administration permanent in statute, by formally establishing processes for large program and the Minority Business Development Center, by expanding the geographic reach of the MBDA by authorizing the creation of regional MBDA offices and rural business centers, by creating a new program to partner with historically Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions to build a pipeline of entrepreneurial talent, by designating a Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Minority Business Development to lead the MBDA, by increasing MBDA's grant-making capacity to carry out economic development and research, by increasing MBDA's fiscal year 2021 budget to fund those initiatives. These are but a few of the ways in which the Minority Business Resiliency Act of 2021 will provide an economic vaccination and recovery plan for minority businesses. Therefore, I proudly encourage you and urge you to support this timely and vital legislation, and I thank all of you for your support of minority business enterprises.
Thank you so much, Congressman Green. And we truly appreciate the hard work that you and your leadership have done to make the Minority Business Development Agency a permanent entity for many small business owners, for you and Senator Cardin. I want to say hello to everyone. My name is Renee Johnson. I am a senior advisor to public-private strategies, as well as a co-lead to Reimagine Main Street, which is a project of public-private strategies. And I will be your moderator for today's discussion. I'm so excited that we are talking about this particular issue, and more specifically, Black business is Black power. We're reimagining the Minority Business Development Agency to level the playing field for minority-owned small businesses and closing the racial wealth gap. But before we get going in the discussion today, I would love to give a few moments for each of our amazing panelists to introduce themselves. So first up, we are going to talk with Sharon Pender, President, Capital Region, Minority Supplier Development Council. Ms. Pender, if you don't mind, just giving us a brief introduction of who you are.
Thank you, Renee. And again, I'd like to echo what everybody is feeling. I know I'm super excited at the possibility, the probability that we're moving forward with something that's been way overdue. Again, I'm Sharon Pender, President and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council. And that is part of one of 23 affiliates of the National Minority Supply Development Council that's headquartered in New York. I am headquartered here in Maryland, and our territory includes the state of Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Northern Virginia. And our 50 years old, actually, with seed money from MBDA, our goal is to be that conduit between certified MBEs and corporate America. And that, of course, includes, for us, state, local, and federal government as well. And so I'm also the operator of MBDA centers, most recently the MBDA Center for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Wow, thank you. And thank you for the amazing work you're doing for small businesses. We really appreciate that. Now we're going to talk to, and I'm going to say it, I know we were talking in the green room, Dr. Maya Durnovo, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, but she's going to correct us and make sure we say it right in the future. She is the Chief Entrepreneurial Officer at the Houston Community College.
Thank you so much. And again, I am thrilled to be a part of this panel and really the support of MBDA. I am the entrepreneurial officer, so we have a very robust programs at Houston Community College, all designed to build economic equity, to build the local economy, to help start and grow businesses. And through all of it, we really focus on minority-owned businesses, helping them to make the connections, get the contracts, prepare to make the bids, and really to help them build wealth. So the work is enormously rewarding, and really I am honored to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maya. And of course, a panel ain't a panel. If you're talking about Black business, you got to have them. You love them. We love to have them and hear from Mr. Ron Busby, Senior President and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc.
Thank you, Renee, for having us this morning. I am really, really excited. Obviously, the topic of the panel is about Black power. And for those of you that know me, know that my father was a member of the Black Panther Party. So I grew up talking about the power of a Black dollar. As we circulate the Black dollar within our community, we have the power to grow our communities, grow our businesses, and most importantly, grow America. And so again, my name is Ron Busby. I'm the president of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., headquartered here in Washington, D.C. We began in 2009. And our first conversation, first board meeting that we had was, we've got to make sure that MBDA gets codified. As a previous business owner, I understand the importance that the Minority Business Development Agency plays. And for everyone, make sure you understand, this is the only agency in the federal government that even has the title minority included in its title. And so we understand that when we advocate on behalf of Black businesses, that when we advocate on behalf of minority businesses, America economies does well. The U.S. Black Chamber represents 150 Black chambers across the country, located in 42 states, with a membership of over 385,000 Black-owned businesses who are all excited about the renewal and the codification of the Minority Business Development Agency. We are founded on 5 pillars, and our first one is advocacy. And this is the result of great advocacy work that the U.S. Black Chamber, as well as our members, have done over the last 12 years. Our second one is the access to capital. And what the Minority Business Development Agency really does is help provide the resources, the relationships, and most importantly, the capital that small, minority, and particularly Black-owned firms need. Our third one is around contracting opportunities, and MBDA is very instrumental in providing access to contracts. So often we are looking for the federal government to include Black-owned businesses. MBDA is there to make sure that we have those opportunities. Our fourth one is really around entrepreneurial training, and MBDA has played a pivotal role in providing technical assistance to many Black-owned businesses and minority firms that don't have the resources in their local communities. And so through relationships like MBDA, working currently with U.S. Black Chambers, our members are providing the resources, information, and relationships that they need. And lastly, it's really around chamber development. I want to say I'm extremely happy that I was selected in 2016 as the Minority Business Development Agency Advocate of the Year. I have believed in what MBDA stands for. More importantly, I believe in what they can do for our members and Black businesses across the country. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to codify this agency and move our businesses forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ron. We appreciate that. And the energy and spirit that you consistently bring in talking about Black businesses. We are here for it when we celebrate it. So I know that there are a lot of questions that people have. And we actually had a question from Mike B. from Forestville, Maryland, who asked this question that I want to pose to each of you. We can start with you, Dr. Maya, and then we'll go on to each of you for a response, which is, this is the first that he's learning about the MBDA. And he wished he had known, before about it. What more can be done to get the word out about MBDA and other programs that will help Black small business owners?
Well, I think sharing the examples of the success of the work that has been done. And just to give you a little snippet, in Houston, because of MBDA, minority-owned businesses have been able to access over the last 8 years $531 million in contracting and $623 million in financing, and they've created close to 1,400 jobs. So those are all folks that have worked with MBDA that know about us. They spread the word, and in turn now people are coming to us at HCC to learn about how they can grow their business. So it's exponential, it grows. So we're really proud of this work. That's close to $1 billion of impact to get taken together.
That's amazing. And that's a lot of money, within the community. Mr. Busby, can you answer Mike B's question? What more can be done to get the word out about MBDA?
Mike B, so great question, man. And I would say if you're in business, you've got to make sure that you're educating yourself, that you're looking for networks as well as individuals that can advocate on behalf of your business as well as your needs. So many businesses went out of business last year, not because of lack of acumen, not because of lack of information. It was really about lack of information, lack of relationships. And MBDA, as well as other agencies, are there to provide you with the resources and the information that you need to expand and make sure that your business is sustainable. So you can start by joining a local chamber or the U.S. Black Chamber to make sure that you know about MBDA, as well as other organizations and agencies that are providing the resources that we all need to move our communities and businesses forward.
That's true. And speaking on joining and making sure people are doing their due diligence and research, Sharon, what are some other opportunities that Mike B can get into and learn more or help spread the word about MBDA?
I think it's very interesting that there is still, even now, of an organization that's been around for 50 years that people haven't heard of. So you have to step back and then say why, right? And when we look at resources that are available, and I think because there are resources everywhere, whether it's on the local level, state level, federal level, private sector, all of that. And then we require minority businesses, Black businesses to do certifications, for example. And so there is no central point of information. And oftentimes what ends up happening is when you don't know kind of where to start. There's so much information. So the opportunity is for MBDA, for example, once it's codified, to be that central point of information, and then meet people where they are. You know, we don't know what kind of business that Mike has, but you know, are there industry groups or related groups that may be a part of that? But I think that there has to be an intentional effort, because we hear this quite often. I know the work that we all do. And you think that you work sun up and sun down, and it was like, what do you mean you haven't heard of me? But we have to take in consideration that that's a reality, and how do we begin to solve the problem?
Well, and that's a great point, because each of you work very closely with small businesses and your communities and across the nation. So if you could each kind of go through and talk about the sense of how minority small businesses, and particularly Black small business owners that you work with, are feeling right now. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We thought we were on the other side. We're coming to Delta variant, Lambda, and all this other stuff. What are we having? You know, MBDA, you know, it's codification. Like, all these things are happening in the reality of many Black small business owners. What are you guys kind of like seeing and feeling in the environment? We'll start with you, Mr. Busby.
Great. I would say that Black businesses are feeling optimistic. The challenge that we have as organizational leaders, especially advocates for Black-owned business, this conversation really is happening during Black Business Month. It's talking about the power of the Black business. But we got a problem because many of the programs that are created for minority businesses. And so we've got to make sure, as Sharon talked about, intentionality. And so Black business owners are saying, hey, there's conversations about trillions of dollars being spent in an infrastructure bill, but how can we ensure that Black businesses, Black communities, Black employers get their bite at the apple? And so often our communities, our businesses are left out, in no disrespect to any other community, but when we have conversations about minority firms, many times it's not Black businesses that are getting included. And so our businesses are very optimistic, but they're very concerned that we make sure that intentionality is included in policies that are being created, that we're making sure that there's some accountability and that there's some tracking. So often we hear about corporations making commitments of $6 and $7 billion, but when the rubber hits the road, it's very tough to track and trace and to have accountability. And so our businesses are optimistic, but they're making sure that MBDA, US Black Chambers, NMSDC is there to advocate, to make sure that they're not being left out on the long haul.
Well, it sounds like making sure that accountability is there. That is amazing, because it's really real. Accountability and having a seat at the table, make sure that you're a part of that conversation. Let's go with Sharon. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, Renee, what you're saying relative to seat at the table, and we've been saying that for years and years and years. And so the reality is something that Ron just said. These programs were built on the backs of Blacks, right? When you talk about 50 years ago, what was happening was on the heels of civil unrest. So historically, when you look at this, what you don't want to have happen is that 50 years later, we're having the same conversation, but we aren't doing anything differently. And so, I wanted to make that point. But when you look at what the concerns, your question was, what's the concerns of minority businesses, Black-owned businesses today? Well, we have the same concerns as businesses, period, right? The health of our employees. Who's vaccinated? Will they come back to the office? How do I keep employees safe in a work environment? Those are things that I'm hearing that people, look, I'm trying to figure that out for myself from my organizational standpoint, right? Our businesses are kind of shell-shocked with the economy. When America catches a cold, we catch pneumonia. In this particular case, we have died off. And so how do we continue to deal with the rising prices, getting imported products from manufacturing countries, where the pandemic is raging, the minimum wage requirement, that's coming into play. We are, that kind of stuff keeps us up at night as well. And so as the economy goes, it's going to have a more blatant effect on our businesses. And so we have to help and solve those issues.
So it sounds like care economy is also impacting Black small business owners as well, and is something that's the core of making sure there's resilience coming to fruition as well. Dr. Maya, your thoughts?
Well, I think building programs that incorporate resiliency, and we've done a lot of that at HCC. We have a lot of programs that are designed to build that kind of resiliency, whether it's digital or financial or marketing, and they've become very popular. As a matter of fact, because of the pandemic, and we've had to go to a virtual environment, we've actually been able to reach a lot more minority-owned businesses than we did before when they had to come in person. So even though the challenge has been incredibly difficult, there is that benefit of connecting virtually, and we have turned all of our services into a virtual environment until we can go back in person.
Well, that's good to know that social distancing has been a priority in ensuring that people are still able to get resources and quickly during this time as well. Has been a very, very good opportunity to engage people in their community. So thank you for that. Going to turn to a quick question from Jermaine, because I think one of the main things that was a theme was like there's a problem, and a solution. So here's our trouble, and hopefully there's some solution. I'm fortunate that my business has not suffered too greatly during the pandemic, and I've been able to use my PPP and EIDL to keep my employees on and invest in my business. When I think about the future, my biggest concern is getting the capital I need to continue growing my business. My business is successful and I have several years of growing revenue, but searching an adequate line of credit from a bank remains a challenge. Does the MBDA lend to minority businesses? And if not, what can I should I do? So love to start with you, Sharon, on this, on what Jermaine could or should or ought to do in his situation.
In its current state, MBDA does not lend money currently, right? And so, but what we have found, whether it was through, just by default, there are some what we call minority-friendly banks, and whether they're regional banks or banks that have taken that into consideration, who seem to work harder to help MBEs through the lending process. And, as an organization, we refer people to. And so I'm glad to hear that Jermaine was able to get through this downturn, which was pretty significant. But there are resources that are available, MBDA centers, or whether it's organizations like the Capital Region or any of my partners across the country can make those referrals. We look at our organization that has most of the top banks in the country as a part of our corporate partners. And so that have, over the past year in particular, with the social unrest and with the pandemic, have looked inwardly to make determinations as to how to support minority businesses. Have we reached the point where there's no problem? Absolutely not. But there's at least the dialogue and conversation and some evidence where this has turned around, because access to capital, undercapitalization, that whole issue remains an issue and a problem.
Thank you for that. Dr. Maya, thoughts? We know the MBDA does not do loans, but what are some suggestions that you have?
Well, we, for example, in Houston, we have a wonderful relationship with a local CDFI, Community Financial Development Institution, a LIFT fund, and they actually specialize in lending to minority-owned businesses. So there are other local resources, not to mention that we have really good relationships with the local banks. So we are a conduit to help get those loans and to work on any credit issues as well, because sometimes that does need to be addressed, and we do that. That's one of the things that we're really proud to, if someone does have an issue, to start changing that and improving the credit line.
And that's very important because there are many people who have suffered, whether it's no credit or lack of credit, or some sort of issues with their credit. Having someone have a conversation with them about alternatives and options and how to handle it is so impactful and important in making sure that they're on a trajectory to
Right.
understanding what they can and ought to be doing with their credit.
Mhm.
Mr. Busby, I know you got some suggestions for Jermaine
Yeah.
here. I know you got some.
Because I want to keep it real. So often, especially over the last 12 months, we heard a great deal about why Black businesses were suffering. Understand that prior to COVID, the top 3 concerns for Black-owned businesses was access to capital.
Mhm.
Any small business owner is going to be their top 1 concern. For Black-owned businesses, it's going to be their top 3 concern. I could have the same credit score as my white neighbor. I could have the same business plan as my white neighbor. I could own my home. My white neighbor could rent his home. I could be a college graduate. My white neighbor could be a high school graduate. We could both go to the same bank with the same business plan, asking for $100,000. I'm going to get $40,000. My white neighbor is going to get $100,000. End of conversation. So all of that conversation about financial literacy, Black business owners have more college degrees, more postgraduate degrees than any other ethnic community, any other business community in the country. Yet we still aren't getting the dollars that we need to grow our businesses. So I'm really happy that Jermaine did one thing that I'm so happy and so concerned that many Black businesses did not participate in, and that was the EIDL program. There's still $250 million left in the EIDL program. So many of our businesses were marketed towards going towards the payroll protection plan. That's where all of the information was coming. But of the 2.6 million Black-owned firms, 2.5 million have no employees. So it was never set up for our businesses versus the EIDL program, which really had more flexibility. And most importantly, especially as it has come out in today's environment, it's not about your credit score. It's not about your banking relationship. It is really about making sure that you're telling a good, compelling story to the Small Business Administration. The SBA is awarding the loans. These are sometimes very, very low interest rate loans, and many times up to 30 years. Most of our businesses didn't apply because they didn't know what the interest rates were going to be. They didn't know very much information about it, how long, or we didn't know how long the COVID-19 was going to happen.
Right.
So to take out a loan and say, well, I don't even know how much or how long I'm going to need the money was really unfair. And so for firms like Jermaine's, kudos to you for signing up for EIDL. And for the rest of you, make sure you're looking into it. And secondly, during these down times, I would tell people, go find not just a CDFI, but a Black-owned bank.
Yes.
70% of loans that Black banks make are to Black business owners and Black homeowners. Let's establish those relationships because a couple of things will happen. That economy now is going to stay within our communities. When we go outside of our communities, traditionally, we get either higher interest rates, we get the negative answer, or the money leaves our community. Let's make sure that we're having an eco conversation about having sustainability in our communities. And it starts with where we bank and, more importantly, the relationships that we have with those banks. And so while we're down, before the next variant of the COVID comes, go establish that relationship now or it's still open. Go tell your story about what you're going to need the funds for, as opposed to going after the emergency has hit. Let's go now and be proactive versus reactive.
And just to piggy on that, Mr. Busby, just let people know your credit score minimum is a 570 for an EIDL loan. So to your point, you definitely should look into it. Go to the SBA's website. COVID EIDL is what people want to look at. 570. And they're willing to work with people. So definitely listen to Mr. Busby on that point for that COVID EIDL. Thank you for that point. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you're about to say something else on that.
No, and the last thing I was just going to say is that for those businesses that are here, that need resources, that need information. You can get certified with NMSDC, but you can also get certified with the U.S. Black Chamber as a Black-owned business at byblack.us. Allows you to be certified as a Black-owned business so that the resources that you're looking for, contract opportunities, as well as government agencies that are looking to find you, can find you, as well as corporate spend.
Look at that, USBC, one-stop shop. Get everything you can. I'm here for it.
Trying to make it easy for them.
Well, and as we're talking about resources and, COVID idle, the infrastructure bill, is among us, it's upon us, it's throughout this whole time period of this year, right? It's one of the main focuses of Congress. And as we're moving forward with the infrastructure bill, what role do you see the MBDA playing in the effort to ensure that minority-owned small businesses are involved in infrastructure projects from conception to its completion? I will let whoever would like to go first on this, because I know people have their different perspectives about the infrastructure bill. So whoever wants to go first, I'll let go first here. This is a freebie.
Sharon, I'll go then. I saw you were about to jump in. I think it is an exciting time for minority business, particularly Black firms, in that we've seen and heard a commitment from the federal government to really address our infrastructure as a country. I think it's also very important for our businesses to understand, hey, here's an opportunity for us to participate in one of the largest spends that this country has seen as it relates to building back our infrastructure better. But what we've got to do is to make sure that we're building Black better, that we're making sure that Black businesses are participating. And so MBDA is going to play a critical role. So often the last opportunities were for the smallest of the small businesses. MBDA, as well as this opportunity, is really going to be looking at large firms. When you're talking about building highways and bridges and opportunities for electric vehicles, this is going to take businesses with size and scale. What MBDA is going to provide is the technical assistance, is going to provide the opportunity to look at how do we partner, how do we merge, how do we grow our own size and scale so that we can take advantage of these opportunities. We do not want this to pass us by and look back and say, gosh, we could have, we should have. We have an agency that is there that will be codified to make sure that we have that opportunity to participate. And so for the businesses that are listening and watching, make sure that you introduce yourselves to MBDA so that they know who you are, so that we don't get left out and look back on this in years to come and say, gosh, I wish I had better prepared myself. We can do that now as the infrastructure bill is being discussed, and look to the U.S. Black Chamber to make sure that you're touching all of the resources that you need to grow your business.
I totally agree with that. One of the things I would say at the National Minority Supply Development Council, as you know, we're the premier certifying body for the country for minority businesses. We have revenue class. Class 1 is for our certified MBEs of less than $1 million, class 2, 1 to 10, class 3, 10 to 50 million, and class 4, 50 million and above. And I make that point because when I got into this, I drank the Kool-Aid and got into this work about 15 years ago as a cabinet secretary in the state of Maryland, looked at minority business. And this whole notion of minority business, there was a perception that if it was a minority business, Black-owned business, whatever, that it was mom and pop and small. And so what I will say is that we have very sophisticated businesses. We have multi-billion-dollar businesses at this point in time. But I will also say that discrimination doesn't stop at $1, right? Or millions of dollars. So the picture I'm trying to paint is the infrastructure bill, or the work that's coming for this infrastructure, is a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I think that what I think is real key in terms of MBDA. The government has always played a pivotal role when it came to or comes to growing an industry. You know, the short example I'll give is the auto industry. When the auto industry came about, what did the government do? It built roads. So now we have infrastructure and we have trillions of dollars that's being committed to doing it. And that old adage of having a seat at the table becomes very important, because as this grows, if we're at the table, our businesses will grow. We have not been at the table in prior years, in prior situations. There is a bridge being built, can't remember the name of it right now, but New York, New Jersey is about $2.3 billion you're spending, and they have a 5% minority business goal. Why? They're saying because we don't have the capacity to do it. Well, what I will push back and say that when this was first conceived, white businesses didn't have the capacity either. And what did they do? They were able to partner with European firms at that point in time. So I started this conversation with talking about the capability of and sophistication of some of our firms. There should not be an excuse for the exclusion of minority business firms with infrastructure at this point in time. And that is the role MBDA can play as the government entity.
Well, it sounds like definitely procurement is definitely a value add here with the infrastructure bill, and making sure that not only do we have, you know, the higher tiers, but we have subprimes that come along as well and assist on projects. Because while I may not be able to have all of the, you know, employees or materials, there are subprimes that are out there that exist that can be able to assist and be brought in and assist within the projects. Dr. Maya. Oh, sorry.
And we're sophisticated enough to understand what acquisition is about. And so, you know, it's like, don't play us short. We certainly can participate, right? And so that is that whole notion. But there has to be, you know, without the public policy there, you know, that changes the behavior in the marketplace, there has to be, I think, that leadership within federal government. And the only thing that we have at this particular point in time is MBDA to make that happen.
Thank you for that. Dr. Maya.
I just wanted to add a very practical note. One of the things that we do here locally is we've got a procurement guide. And we do workshops on and go through the guide, not only how to do a bid, but where are the opportunities. And if you need help putting together the bid or meeting the contractor, that's what we do. So we really have the practical help here on a daily basis. And that's why it's so vital to have the agency, to have the staff that provides all of these services, not to mention the encouragement to go after these contracts, because it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but we are there behind the businesses to help them get those contracts. So use the resources.
No, that's a great point. And I think that brings us to the beginning with Mike B's question, you know, like, where do you find the resources? How do we know? How do we get those uplifted? And here we are, you know, full circle to that, Dr. Maya, of ensuring that here are these materials that people do create to ensure that there are opportunities for people to learn and understand how to actually get this done.
Exactly. Let me just share with you one other thing that we do. We even have an export academy where we offer a series of 6 workshops on how do you export, how do you take your product and services and take them overseas and benefit from that. So there are a lot of things that we do that really support the minority-owned business owner.
Well, and that's a great point, because that segues into sort of like partnerships, right? The MBDA partnerships with HBCUs, MSI, shooter colleges. How do you all see those partnerships develop over time, right? And what are the most effective ways for the MBDA to invest in sort of like next gen, that next generation and next wave of Black entrepreneurs? And, you know, Dr. Maya, since we're right here, you know, with you, let's start here.
Well, we've got partnerships with 32 different organizations, starting with the City of Houston, the Office of Business Opportunity, HMSDC, the Urban League, all of the chambers, SBA and Lift Fund, all of the banks. I mean, it's a long, extensive list. And what we do is very often we co-sponsor a lot of events so that you're not only meeting MBDA, but you're also meeting the local strategic partner who can give you either a loan or help you with a credit or help you access that contract. We do a matchmaking event with the SBA every single year where 500 small businesses come on campus and meet the larger contractors. So there's a lot of, the activities are going on a weekly basis, not to mention all of the one-on-one business advising. So my plea is always use our resources. We are here to help and support and grow.
And that's very important because creating a business, it's about not only just the creation of, but how do you grow and sustain, right? And that's very important, especially with the next generation. Mr. Busby, would love to know sort of like your thoughts on the MBDA's partnerships with HBCUs, MSI, junior colleges, and how you think those partnerships develop over time and the effective ways for the MBDA, to invest in the next generation of minority Black small business owners.
Great question. And as a graduate of an HBCU myself, Florida A&M, I understand the role of what an MBDA can do for an HBCU. So many of our young people are graduating from college right now, and they're saying to themselves, you know what? I think I want to go into business for myself. And the U.S. Black Chamber says, no, you don't. We know that 90% of small businesses are going to fail very early in their infancy. And so we tell young people, come work with an agency like an MBDA, like a U.S. Black Chamber, find out what it is exactly you think you want to do. And we can partner you with a small Black firm that is doing something very similar and earn yourself a job, earn yourself a career, bring that technical experience that you're bringing from college to that small business owner, and that business will grow exponentially. Some of the successes that we have seen from small businesses are coming from young adults that are bringing that energy, bringing that new idea, new approaches for growth and expansion. So I definitely see the role that MBDA plays there. But secondly, I want to go back to a question that you asked earlier that I didn't get a chance to jump in on, and something that the MBDA can do, and I'll try to make it quickly, and that is put in teeth to the subcontractor contracts that the primes have. So often prime contractors will get a contract and tell the federal government, yeah, we're going to subcontract to, women-owned firms, Black-owned firms, and we're going to spend 12%, 20%, and it never happens. They get the contract, they're awarded the dollars, and they do all the work themselves. What MBDA and SBA and other agencies can do is to make sure that when those prime contractors say, yes, we're going to use subcontractors, that there's some real teeth in those contracts, as well as some accountability so that there's metrics throughout the contract. Where are those minority and small businesses getting those opportunities? And many of those primes will say, well, we can't find them, we looked. That's where organizations like ours can participate. But we're going to need the heavy hand of Congress and the heavy hand of the Minority Business Development Agency to say, yep, well, you attempted, but we have some partners that can help you actually implement that, subcontractor opportunity. But I think that the young adults that are looking to go into business should find organizations like ours, like NMSDC, like working at the Houston Community College, to make sure that they have relationships with large firms. If you look at Black enterprise, every year you'll see successful businesses fall off that top 100 list, not because they weren't good businesses, not because they didn't have good products or services, they didn't have a succession plan. They did not have someone to pass that torch to. And so as opposed to trying to create a new mousetrap, let these young people go work with a company now that's doing the work, that is doing it exceptionally well, learn from them, and either take that experience and go do it for themselves. That's what I was able to do, or earn yourself with the opportunity to take over an existing Black-owned or minority-owned firm.
That is a very interesting perspective. And I love a good old family succession plan or a way to hand generational wealth down. And I think that's one point that we want to make here today is how do we create and stop, the gap, right? That is a great example right there that you gave, Mr. Busby, of that gap, right? Racial wealth gap right there. We can stop, everybody. We solved the problem.
Drop the mic, right?
Right, mic drop right there. But Sharon, I feel like you about to come with them too. So
Well,
know.
I'm just going to mention a couple something very briefly. It's about HBCUs and how do I spell Morgan State University? That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, what our firms are missing when we look at, as we look at this global economy, continue to look at it, we, I think, are stellar in providing innovation. But what we do not have is the applied research and development that other institutions have. And so if HB, and I just love what the congressman and my Senator Ben Cardin is doing in terms of this bill, by the emphasis on HBCUs and community college, et cetera, here is the opportunity by which innovation can be supported by our colleges and to have the tech transfer take place at our HBCUs. And so I'm excited that that lays the foundation by which that can happen. The other thing I'll comment on is what Mr. Busby said in terms of the legislation. I think if we look at what has been done in our state and local governments, I think that is an example of by which we can do things at the federal level. And I know in the state of Maryland, when I was a cabinet secretary, we put in place legislation that says that if you bring me to the party as a subcontractor, you've got to then dance with me, as opposed to shopping out bids. The other thing we put in place was the first state level small business reserve program. We did small business so we wouldn't be sued or pushed back. And the goal there was to create more prime contractors. And to get out of the subcontracting game, we always said that we're going to stop sharecropping. We've got to own the land. And so in order to do that, you have to be a prime contractor. I just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
No, and that goes hand in hand, right? I mean, again, that racial wealth gap, you two combine your powers together, not Captain Planet, we have more Black business billionaires with these ideas put together. So I think there's been a lot that we can take from our conversation today and amplify and put out there that the MBDA can effectively, when codified, execute and make sure we are making more Black business owners out there having resources, opportunities, and options. Because again, we want to make sure they have options for being those small business owners that they choose to be. So I want to wrap up, but before we do that, I would love to give you all a few moments to just sort of say any, final words about Black business, MBDA, and the racial wealth gap in closing it. So we'll start with Mr. Busby, since we did intros last, if we'll go in reverse order.
Well, first off, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited that we've had the opportunity to hear from Representative Congressman Al Green, and we know that this legislation is also backed by my Senator Ben Cardin as well. And so first off, I want to say thank you to them for seeing the need to make sure that this agency is codified. I want to talk a little bit about this month of being Black Business Month and why it is so important. And so often we hear, well, is this reverse discrimination? Ron, you're always talking about Black, or Black business. And this conversation about making Black power and Black pride. And so I will go back to a conversation that you probably have heard me say before, and that is, I think Black people want to see America great. We heard a great deal about making America great again over the last 5 years. And we say, yeah, we want America to be great as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great Black America. And in order for there to be a great Black America, we must have great Black businesses. And in order to have great Black businesses, we need agencies like Minority Business Development Agency to provide the resources, the technical assistance, the grants, as well as the opportunities to network so that we can grow our businesses and our communities to have the long-term sustainability that we need as a community of Black businesses and a community across the country. And so again, thank you for allowing us to be here. We are extremely proud to be participating with the codification of Minority Business Development Agency. I'm very excited about their future as well as the future of the U.S. Black Chamber.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Maya.
In summary, I just want to say that Houston Community College is really proud and honored to collaborate with MBDA because we really play an absolutely critical role. And I think that over the past 8 years, and now we've been renewed for another 5, that we've made a significant impact, and I think it's going to continue to grow because it is about growth and sustainability of minority businesses. So the actual work, the advocacy, the access to resources, the preparation, the connections, and the building of relationships is really the heart and soul of this work. So we are really committed to economic equity. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sharon Pinder.
Well, and I join my colleagues in saying that I appreciate being a part of the conversation with Congressman Al Green and again, my Senator Ben Cardin, who is doing exceptional work. I get really excited when history is made. If you think about it, it's an agency that's been around for now 51 years, and there wasn't the political will or the timing was, whatever the reason, it wasn't done, and it's being done now. And so as the operator of MBDA centers, as the president of NMSDC affiliate, the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council, I look forward to riding this wave of history. And what better part of the journey after coming out of a pandemic, after coming out of social injustice in our face for forever, to now being able to realize that the least funded and most ignored agency in the federal government will now have its place. And I think that optimistically, it is now looking up as we look forward. But guess what? At the end of the day, I tell people, my father was an entrepreneur, and the conversations they were having then, we're having now. But I am confident that perhaps we'll get past the rhetoric and get into a whole new dimension around Black-owned businesses that I'll call 2.0.
I love that. Well, want to thank all of our amazing panelists today for a great discussion about Black business and Black power and reimaging the Minority Business Development Agency to level the playing field for the minority-owned small business development agency, and close the racial wealth gap. This has been a wonderful discussion. Want to thank Senator Cardin, Congressman Green for bringing us all together and making this happen, and also being the visionaries to actually have the legislation to execute this. So we want to thank them and appreciate everyone for tuning in and joining us today. Thank you so much.